Hey, friends, welcome back to our conversation. Name is Temi, and I'm here with my boy Sean. And tonight, or rather today, we're going to talk about something we call the black parallel. You might want to say, what does the black parallel mean? We're going to dig into that. And as always, it's just two guys, having a conversation, things that we find to be a little intriguing. And we're just trying to make our guys, our friends think a little bit about some of the things that we think are rather important.
Yeah, Temi, thank you. The black parallel, I think we've spoken before about this, and I keep saying that the issues surrounding Africa and Africans, wherever you are, I think some of these issues are very, very monolithic. We're the ones that are not connecting the dots. I think that for the longest time, the narrative that we're different and, different things happen to us, this, that, and the third, has actually served to push us further apart. But like you said, interestingly enough, when you just do a little bit of digging or reading, or you look at some things, you start to realize that what has been deployed against us, right, almost like a book, they just repeat the same story in the book over and over and over and over again. And what's interesting to me is you look at certain things and you just get really confused by some things. I'll start with this.
Okay.
When I saw the Black Panther movie, right? Obviously it's a fictional thing.
Of course.
But some of the things that they dealt with in that movie actually made me chuckle. For instance, like most African countries, Wakanda is a country in Africa that is resource rich.
Right.
But then the one thing that Wakanda did right was they kept their resource to themselves by keeping the colonizers out of Wakanda. And what happened was they were then able to deploy or develop their resources at their own pace. As a matter of fact, it was interesting to me to see that they kept their resource a secret. Almost knowing that once the outside world, and by outside world, read West, once they realize what you have in your country will never know peace. And we've seen this in so many different examples. For instance, I keep asking people this question: what is the richest country in terms of resources in Africa? It's the Congo. The Congo powers cell phones, it powers so many things. And yet that country has never known peace.
No, it hasn't.
It suffers from the resource curse. So the black parallel for me is us trying to dig deep into the commonalities of how we're dealt with, regardless of where we are. And I'm going to start with Haiti, which is something that you know quite a bit about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. The story of Haiti is, I find it tragic, and I find it exploitative. I find it, the thing that really gets me, going into this Haiti thing, what Haiti did, and what America did, in getting independence, were not different things.
No, they were not.
Yeah, but the reaction and the reception and what happened to both the two different people became so different.
That's right.
One was encouraged, one was applauded, fighting for rights and all of that. But for Haiti, they were ostracized, they were cut off, and the reality of Haiti is a consequence of doing what somebody else did and became
a nation.
Now, they tried it, and
are we not told that the natural state of any man is freedom?
That's
Isn't,
right.
isn't that what we're told?
Yes,
Now,
sir.
when Haiti kicked out the French, it was interesting that the French actually bought battleships. They brought battleships to Haiti. They surrounded Haiti.
Right.
And they told Toussaint and his gang that, listen, yeah, okay, right? You kicked out, you kicked them out, right? You killed the slave owners. It'll be a shame if your experiment in freedom ended here. So almost at the point of a gun, they made them sign a document, which, in my opinion, is nothing but reparation. Now think about this. Haiti didn't stop paying this thing until recently.
That's right.
Right? So the descendants of slaves were paying the descendants of slave owners reparations.
But this is a dual. This is a parallel. This is a black parallel that we're talking about right now, man. We're talking about Haiti in the Western Hemisphere.
That's right.
But till today, the francophone countries in Africa are still paying France because that's what I call what they're doing. They're still paying France.
They're still paying France.
Yeah, till today. The same thing.
Absolutely.
Yes, and so what are we talking about? This black parallel. We're saying that regardless of where you happen to be in the world today as a black person,
As an African,
because we understand. This is the key, though. First of all, I want you to understand. I'm going to start with the word as a black person. And hopefully help to break down some of the barriers, because I understand that some of us, they kind of like push back against being identified as African.
That's true.
I'm not sweating anybody for that. I just believe that a little bit of understanding of what this is, the commonality, in every black person who actually originates from Africa. So by the time we understand who we are as black people, then being identified as Africans becomes second nature.
It becomes second nature.
It becomes who you are.
It becomes who you are.
By the time you start to understand that your experience, in one particular corner of the world, parallels the
what another person that looks like you is going through in another part of the world.
Yes.
All of a sudden you start seeing the commonality of your experience.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? So you mentioned the 14 francophone countries in Africa, right?
Yeah.
That France is currently dealing with. So growing up, I mean, when you think about France, you think about, the Champs-Élysées, you think about, the Seine River, you think about the Eiffel Tower. And, of course, the fact that they drink wine and eat cheese. You think, okay, this is why these guys are so, they're so wealthy. But you're like, maybe not so fast. Yeah. Maybe the reason why these guys are still so wealthy is the fact that they have their knees on the necks of so many African countries. Yeah. As a matter of fact, when I realized the state of these African countries that we're talking about, it was interesting for me to realize that the document that France made them sign, once again, sign a document, that document was actually called an agreement for the continuation of colonization.
Wow, that's incredible.
Can you believe? Yeah. The document literally says, yes, we're leaving, but you're signing a document wherein you're saying you agree that we're going to continue to colonize you. Now, if you imagine these documents were signed maybe 50, 60 years ago, do you know the amount of treasure that France has reaped from these countries? The black parallel.
It's a black parallel.
Isn't it?
It's the same thing, we live here in the United States, and, our experience and, the everyday life that we live, our experience pretty much, parallels the experiences of Black people the world over.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we're not here, saying, "Hey, man, woe is me" or whatever. The point to me of identifying a parallel, of identifying the similarities, right? Just as the word similarities implies. Once you start seeing similarities between yourself and somebody else, I would imagine that the next instinct is to come together.
Absolutely.
Because that is the point of this conversation. That is the point of this vision that I have, of Black people, people of African descent, coming together and unifying and understanding that we are one people.
Absolutely.
And I believe that if that becomes the case, I was reading somewhere, I can't remember if it's I heard somebody say this. He was making an example of some of the difficulties that we encounter because of this diversity that is in us, right? And he was saying that, back in the slave times, and one of the reasons why, he thinks we are so divided today is because whether we're talking about, the slavery in here in America or the atrocities of colonization and, subjugation on the African continent, people were made to think that there was only room for one person to succeed.
That's right.
Once the masters, gives only. So when you see somebody, that one person succeed, you think he's taking your spot. And so the ramification of that in today's times, right, is this the tear down of each other that we
Absolutely.
seem to see, because you see one person succeed, right, and you think that
there's only room for
that one person,
not knowing that guy is actually being used as a Judas goat.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
One thing I like about what you just said a minute ago, right? Continue this conversation about Black parallel.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how you brought it back to America, because obviously we live in America, and part of our conversation to the king is how we deal with everyday issues in America. Interesting to find out that the Jim Crow era laws were actually the basis of the apartheid regime in South Africa.
Explain.
So, what does Jim Crow say? Jim Crow says you're separate but equal.
Right.
Right. And then they then put into place a series of laws, a series of a way of doing things that supports that ridiculous notion of separate but equal. Right. And then you then start getting marginalized as a Black person, because obviously we understand that systemic racism in America exists. We're never going to talk about that. But they then use the system to convey upon one set of people privilege, and then on another set of people disprivilege. Right? That's the same thing that they did in South Africa. In South Africa, they went as far as to criminalize the fact that you were a Black person. They had the same things, though. I mean, they had the same thing. So, for instance, misogyny was a thing. You couldn't do interracial, marriages. There was a disparity in the way, Blacks were educated, both in America, during the Jim Crow era, and in the apartheid times. Now, interestingly enough, one of the key supporters of South Africa during apartheid was America, because they realized that, okay, what these guys are doing is pretty much similar to what we're doing to our Black people. Yeah. So, what I'm saying? So who are we to, throw stones, because we all live in glass houses. But to our point here, that's another parallel. The way African Americans were treated here and the way that South Africans the indigenous South Africans were treated in their own homes. And to the point that you're making, the reason why we're pointing these things out is because we want to tackle the myth that we're different.
Yes.
We're not different. We are the same kingdom.
That's right.
We've just been splintered.
That's right.
We've been splintered. We've been given different hyphenations of names, Nigerian American, African American, what I'm saying? You see, Ghanaians, you see Africans in Germany, you see Africans everywhere.
Yeah.
Their experiences are the same. Their experiences are the same. And yet, they are fed this constant myth, this constant lie that no, well, you're different from these guys, or you're different from these guys. And then what gets me, like I always keep saying, is we buy into that myth.
We buy into that myth. And that is one, that is why we, I remember this conversation came about, where, the Nigerian here, looks at his brother, his American black brother, and thinks he's for some reason better. And the American brother looks at the Nigerian or the African and thinks that, somehow I'm better because somebody has fed us, the divide and conquer thing.
That's right.
Which, this is the part that I'm trying to, challenge us to think about a little bit, man. With the same people. And as long as you remember a couple of weekends ago, a friend of ours, telling us at her job, she's, Nigerian, telling us at her job, how she gets along with some people, but the African American, man, you pulled her up right away, man.
I had to.
I said, man, they said, oh, way to look at life, man.
Nope.
And that, we'd had these conversations before, but that just, reiterated the importance of, why we need to actually look past all that.
I mean, I will say this, and I think I've said this to you many times before, right? But for the grace of God, we could have been here. We could have been here catching hell.
That's right.
But for the grace of God, we could have been the ones that were caught on the slave ships.
That's right.
And came here and had, all manner of hells beaten out of us, right?
Yeah.
When we realized, and that's another thing that we'll talk about on another podcast, right? But when we realized what these guys were doing, we moved further inland. So they used to come raiding and they would find whole villages just deserted, empty. So, but for the grace of God, my ancestors and your ancestors could have been caught and brought here.
That's right.
Now, so they then came here, right? And they now caught 9,000 types of hell.
Yes.
9,000 types of hell. To any other sort of people, not only would they have been broken, they would have been destroyed. But they were not destroyed. They're still standing.
Yes.
They're still thriving.
Yeah.
They have been woven into the warp and the woof of the American fabric.
Yes.
So much so that America would not know what it was without the African American. And you're saying that I should look down on that? Man, you got to be crazy.
Man, everything,
be crazy.
Me being here right now, right?
It's because of them.
It's because of them. It's because of the sacrifices, man. It's because of the courage, man.
You know what I'm saying?
And do you know how much the civil rights movement actually influenced the decolonization of Africa?
Absolutely. The kind of conversations that were happening back in the in the early 90s, with Marcus Garvey,
yes.
with all these guys.
Yeah.
When they started talking about Pan Africanism, they understood the power that the African American brings to the table.
That's right.
They understood the power that these guys brought to the table. For me to now discard that power and say, you paid for me to be here.
That's right.
You made it possible for me to be here. As a matter of fact, whenever I now look at instances where they try to play me off against the African American, right? I think to myself, damn, you must really be afraid of me having a conversation with this person. Because if you were not afraid of me having a conversation with this person and becoming closer with this person, you wouldn't be trying so hard to tell me how different I am from them.
Yeah.
But when I look at them, when I look at what they've gone through, I'm like, nah, this is my vanguard.
That's right.
This is the tip of my spear. These are the guys that caught the hell that's allowing me to be what I am right now in this country. So,
Yeah. On the same token, in recognizing what the African American historically went through and how they've shaped struggles for liberty all over the world, not just only about black people. Now.
Absolutely.
You know, we from the continent, right, that are comparatively new here, are also in us acknowledging and understanding what the African American has done. You know, I also want the African American to understand what transpired and what happened on the continent. You know, when the things that happened in to the Kikuyus in Kenya, for instance, from the British, you know, what King Leopold did to the Belgian Congo, and, you know, atrocities were perpetrated by, the same people on people of African descent, right? Whether here or in the diaspora.
Absolutely.
You know, so once we start to identify where we've all come from, we begin to see a commonality. We begin to see
a parallel.
Yeah. You know, we begin to see a trend, and we begin to see a connectiveness.
That's right.
You know, the visionaries at the very beginning of, all these struggles, right, understood this. You know, just like you mentioned, the Marcus Garveys, in Africa, the Leopold Sedar Sengers, the Kwame Nkrumahs, man, who had this vision of Pan Africanism, of the African nation.
One voice.
One voice, man.
Voice,
Can you imagine if black people had one African voice? That's whether right. Whether you're in America, you're in Haiti, or in Jamaica, that we saw each other as brothers. For world peace, right? For world peace, man. For we as Africans, we as black people, have to identify ourselves first.
We have to.
Once we begin, for everybody else to be at peace, if that is the ultimate desire, which is the ultimate desire, whether it's realistic or not, we ourselves have to hug ourselves first.
We have to.
Yes.
We have to.
Then we can begin to reconcile. You can't reconcile in fragments. You see?
I agree.
Yeah, so the people who are actually trying to divide us, propagating or they're fostering an illusion. There can't be peace. We all can't get along if they don't get along.
That's right.
And what I'm saying is, the people trying to separate us, it's an illusion of, everybody all, getting along and singing Kumbaya, man. If you're dividing a part of the total is divided.
It's
you know
divided.
what I mean? Yeah.
It's divided. I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. So I was talking to a friend of mine. I'd gotten to know her now. She works at my local grocery store, and we must have been speaking for almost like 5 years. Until one day, she's African American, an elderly lady, sweet lady. She asked me a question. She was like the only reason why she's a bit upset at Africans as a whole. She didn't even know that there was like 54 African countries, but she was like, the reason why I'm upset at Africans as a whole is once we realized, what was happening to them here, why didn't we come and get them? And that question broke my heart for two reasons. It broke my heart for two reasons. Because I could hear the depth of despair in her voice. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I can imagine what it must be like to have gone through what they went through. I'm not gonna be disingenuous and say that, but that hurt. It did hurt me. But the second thing that hurt me was, to your point, how unaware most of them were about the same kind of hell that we were catching on the continent.
On the other continent too.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, you speak about Leopold, and how he killed almost 20 million, Congolese to fuel his rubber industry.
Yeah.
Most of the people in the West knew that this guy was doing something shady, but they turned the other way because they needed his rubber, right?
Yeah.
In Namibia, when Africa was balkanized, for some reason, I think Germany got Namibia. And there was a story I read a long time ago, and I actually saw a picture of Germans back then in lab coats hanging Namibians, and seeing how long it took for them to die. And they were recording this thing almost like some kind of sick experiment. We're not going to talk about what the Dutch and the English did to South Africa. I mean, to this day, is South Africa even a name? It's not a direction. It's a direction. They couldn't even name it properly. You know what I'm saying? They call this South Africa. It's not South. It is Zululand. It's Xhosa land. You know what? But South Africa. And I tried to explain to this lady. I tried to explain to her. It's like, man, I wish we could have come to get you. But the kind of crap that we were
dealing with
back then, I'm like, I'm just glad I finally met you. Because left to them, we probably would never have met. But that is the conversation that she would never have heard. And I'm saying, in the middle of a grocery store, she came around from where she was, and she gave me the biggest hug. She's like, I never knew that. Parallel. We are the same.
Yeah.
The people that spend so much time trying to divide us, they get something out of it. And if there's anything that frustrates me, is our people doing the work
for them.
Like, come on, man. Like, let's talk about food for a second, right? African Americans eat this thing called chitlins. Bro, that thing's nasty.
I know that's right.
That thing's nasty as hell. But here's what's funny. There are some Nigerians that eat that same thing too. They take intestines, right? I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is with black people and eating intestines. I really don't know. But these guys ate chitlins. They will take the stomach lining of cows in Nigeria, right? And then they'll boil the crap out of that thing. Then they'll turn it inside out, right? And when I saw them doing it, I'm like, this is chitlins brought from a cow. Our commonalities go beyond surface. Our commonalities is ingrained into our very DNA.
Yeah, but it has to be. It's the same people.
It is the same people.
It is the same people, and that is the whole point of this. Now what are we saying? We're saying recognize that it is one people.
It is one people.
Yes. And what do once we begin to it's a family. There are discords, there are things that happen in families, every day is not hugging and kissing and carrying on.
It's not.
There are some days, that, things are not just too cool. But you need to understand that you are a family, so that when you understand that, a member of the family goes out, he's supposed to be back by 4:00 and 6 is not back yet. Then, hey, somebody sounds the alarm. Somebody's not here.
We got to go look for
that person. We got to go look for that person.
We got to go look for that person.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying.
There was something that I read, or I heard it. Forgive me, I can't really remember where. The importance of a unified Africa will reverberate around the world. And the impact of a unified Africa will have ripple effects across the globe. Let me tell you why. The reason why the police don't mess with certain nations in America is because they know that this person comes from a nation that is ready to stand toe to toe with America and demand that their citizens, regardless of where they live, be treated fairly. You cannot shoot an East Indian man in America and think you're going to get away with it. You cannot murder, the police cannot murder a Chinese citizen, even if it's American, in this America and get away with it. China will go to war with you. You cannot kill a European here. You cannot kill a European here, right? And think that that European country that that person comes from is not going to go to war with you. So the significance of having a strong Africa, what will that mean? That will mean that you can no longer touch my children and think you're going to get away with it. Because for too long, we've believed this lie that we're so disconnected, we're not even the same. And because of that, they've been picking us off one by one. One by one. Whether you're in the Caribbean, whether you're in Africa, whether you're in America, whether you're even in any of these European countries, our diversification and our belief that we're different does not pay anybody but them.
It's true.
The moment we realize that we're actually the same, that we're the same people, and that we can speak in one voice, bro.
Literally power in numbers, bro.
Bro, I don't care where that African is. That African can be in Compton. That African can be in the south side of Chicago. That African can be in Baltimore. You're just not going to shoot that guy or girl and think you're going to get away with it. Africa is going to have something to say about that.
You know, that takes me back to, you're starting with Wakanda, right?
Yes, sir.
You know, in that movie Black Panther, you know who my hero was in that thing?
I can hazard a guess.
Harry Killmonger, man.
Man, he got it.
That was my guy, man.
He got it.
But hey, the story, it's a work of fiction. But
it is work of fiction.
Yeah, but Killmonger gets it.
And I think that to some level, we still make the same mistakes now. I was telling you at the beginning of this conversation that I saw a movie recently called The Banker. Right? So The Banker is about these two, African-American entrepreneurs, right? And they're trying to start up a business and they need a loan or something. And they realize that by themselves, they cannot get the loan. So what they do is they go and get a white guy off the street, right? Make that guy pretend that he is the CEO of the company, and then they get the loan.
Yeah, you were telling me that they act like they're the janitors.
Like they're the janitors, right? Yeah. Now, why is this funny? I have been to meetings in Ghana, meetings in Nigeria, where we did the same exact thing. Where the idea belongs to the Nigerian or the Ghanaian or the Cameroonian. The knowledge base belongs to the African. But because we have yet to get to the point where we love each other to that level. To the person in Africa that you're selling the idea to, if those words are not coming out of a white man's lips, they're not going to listen. So what do? They get a white guy to come and pitch their idea.
Yeah.
Their idea.
It's funny, but it ain't funny.
It ain't funny.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the black parallel in terms of what's being done to us. I'm not talking about the black parallel in terms of what we do to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because there's two sides to every coin. For this thing to stop working, for us to actually battle white supremacy, we need to stop feeding it. And we feed white supremacy every time we say to ourselves, I will do whatever I need to do as a means to an end, even if it means bringing in a white guy to pretend to be the CEO. It demeans you, it empowers him, and it continues the cycle of a status quo that if he doesn't die, bro,
nothing, I don't even know where we're going to go from there if he doesn't die.
I know, right? I mean, so.
So, hey, what are we saying here, man? For me, I understand that there is, there is a battle, there is, work to be done. But I think one of the steps, in achieving our goals, right, as a people, is to identify ourselves. I just, I'm African. I love Africa, and I see, I have, some of my brothers from Jamaica, some of my brothers from, from this country, right? And all I see are Africans.
All I see are Africans, man.
Yeah. And so that is, where I want us to start thinking. I'm just hoping, that, we're able to persuade some people to think a little differently, or even if it's not differently, to think a little bit deeper about these things.
This is where I want to end this particular conversation. Once again, talking about the George Floyd issue, the amount of Africans, not just African Americans, but Africans that have gone out and marched and protested alongside their African American brothers is truly something to be proud of.
Amen to that.
There was actually an African girl, I believe she was Nigerian. She was actually killed.
Yeah, in Florida.
During one of the protests. So an African's blood was spilled trying to uphold the rights of an African American who was wrongfully killed. So here's my message to the king. We're the same. You see an African with a name you can't pronounce, you try and pronounce that name. You see an African that doesn't look quite like you, you go, you give that person a hug.
That's what's up.
Because the truth of the matter is that person has been through the same amount of hells as you have. But together, you are more powerful.
That's right.
Than if you let somebody divide you.